The knock came at 7:47 on a Saturday morning, sharp, deliberate, angry. Daniel Harper froze mid-pour, coffee streaming past the rim of his mug and pooling on the counter. Nobody knocked like that unless something was catastrophically wrong. He set down the pot with shaking hands and moved toward the door, his heart already racing. Through the peephole, he saw her. Victoria Hale, his boss, standing in the hallway of his apartment building in a tailored coat and heels, her face carved from stone and fury. His stomach dropped. This wasn't a social call. This was an execution. Before we dive into what happens next, I want to invite you to stay with me through this entire story. It's about mistakes, consequences, and the chance at redemption when you least expect it. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if this beginning hooked you, hit that like button. Now, let's get back to the moment that changed everything. Daniel opened the door slowly, as if doing it gently might soften whatever was coming. Victoria stood there with her arms crossed, her gray eyes cold and fixed on him like a judge delivering a verdict. "Ms. Hale," he said quietly, his voice already apologetic, though he didn't yet know what he was apologizing for. I wasn't expecting—" "Clearly," she cut him off, her tone sharp enough to draw blood. "May I come in?" It wasn't really a question. Daniel stepped aside and she walked past him into the small living room of his apartment. Her presence seemed to fill the space immediately, too large, too severe, too corporate for the worn couch covered in blankets, the stack of coloring books on the coffee table, the framed crayon drawings taped to the walls. She looked around with an expression that might have been pity or contempt. Daniel couldn't tell which was worse. From the hallway, a small voice called out, "Daddy? Who's here?" Daniel's chest tightened. "Just a friend from work, sweetheart. Stay in your room for a minute, okay?" "Okay." Lily's voice was bright, trusting. The sound of it made his hands curl into fists at his sides. Victoria turned to face him fully. "I came here because I couldn't do this at the office on Monday. I couldn't sit across from you in some sterile conference room and pretend this was just business." Daniel swallowed hard. "Do what?" She didn't blink. "Fire you." The words landed like a physical blow. Daniel actually took a step back, his shoulder brushing the doorframe. "What?" "You heard me." Victoria's voice was steady, but there was something beneath it, something that sounded almost like exhaustion. "I'm terminating your employment, effective immediately." "But, Daniel's mind scrambled, searching for footing in a world that had just tilted sideways. "I know I've been struggling, but I thought, I've been with the company for 6 years. 6 years of reliable work followed by 6 months of chaos," Victoria interrupted. "Missed deadlines, late submissions. And yesterday, Daniel, you forgot to send the Callaway proposal. Do you understand what that means? Do you have any idea what you cost us?" He did. The Callaway account was worth 7 figures. It was the kind of client that could define a quarter, maybe a year. And he'd forgotten to hit send on the final proposal because he'd been at Lily's school for an emergency parent-teacher conference when she'd gotten into a fight with another student for the first time in her life. By the time he got home, made dinner, helped with homework, and got her to bed, the email had completely slipped his mind. "I know," he said quietly. "I know I messed up. But Ms. Hale, please, I can fix this. I can call them. I can—" "They went with another firm this morning." Her words were clipped, final. "They called me at 6 a.m. to tell me they didn't appreciate being treated like an afterthought." Those were their exact words. An afterthought. Daniel felt his throat closing. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Sorry doesn't pay my other employees. Sorry doesn't rebuild a reputation. Victoria moved further into the room, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. She glanced at the kitchen, at the dishes in the sink, the calendar on the wall covered in Lily's school events written in Daniel's careful handwriting, the grocery list held up by a magnet shaped like a butterfly. "This isn't just about yesterday. It's been building for months. You're always distracted, always running out early or coming in late, always asking for extensions." "Because I'm raising a child alone," Daniel said, and he hated how defensive he sounded, how weak. "I'm doing everything I can. And it's not enough." Victoria's voice softened slightly, but the words still cut. Not for the job I need done. Not for what I'm paying you for. Daniel's legs felt unsteady. He moved to the couch and sat down heavily, his head in his hands. I can't lose this job. I have a daughter. I have rent, bills, her school tuition. I know. Victoria stayed standing, looking down at him. And I wish that changed things, but I'm running a business, not a charity. The cruelty of it, the truth of it, hung in the air between them. Daniel looked up at her, and for the first time he saw past the anger to something else. Weariness. Victoria Hale was 42 years old, brilliant, and had built her marketing firm from nothing into one of the most respected agencies in the city. She was known for being demanding but fair, for expecting excellence and rewarding it generously. She wasn't a villain, she was just someone who'd reached the end of her patience. "When's my last day?" he asked quietly. "Today." Victoria's voice was firm. "I'll have HR process your final paycheck and send it to you by Wednesday. You'll receive 2 weeks severance as per your contract. I'm not trying to destroy you, Daniel, but I can't keep carrying you." He nodded slowly, unable to speak. Victoria moved toward the door, then stopped. She turned back and her expression had shifted into something almost uncertain. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure," Daniel said hollowly. "Why didn't you tell me?" Her voice was quieter now, almost gentle. "About how hard things were. About what you were dealing with." Daniel laughed bitterly. "Would it have mattered?" Victoria didn't answer right away. She looked around the apartment again, really looked this time. At the photographs of Lily on the bookshelf, at the small sneakers by the door, at the evidence of a life being lived by someone who was barely holding on. "I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe not. But you didn't give me the chance to find out." Before Daniel could respond, Lily appeared in the hallway, clutching her stuffed rabbit. She was small for 8, with dark curls like her mother's and Daniel's brown eyes. She looked at Victoria with open curiosity. "Hi," she said shyly. "Are you Daddy's friend?" Victoria's expression flickered. Surprise, discomfort, something softer. "I'm his boss," she said. Was his boss? Lily frowned, not understanding. "Are you leaving?" "Yes." Victoria moved toward the door, her movement suddenly hurried, as if she wanted to escape before something else was said. "I am." She left without another word, the door closing behind her with a quiet click that somehow felt louder than a slam. Lily walked over to Daniel and climbed onto the couch beside him. "Daddy, why do you look sad?" Daniel wrapped his arm around her and pulled her close, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Just a tough morning, sweetheart. Nothing for you to worry about." Is your friend mad at you?" "A little bit," he admitted. Lily thought about this seriously, her small face scrunched in concentration. "Did you say sorry?" "I did." "And she's still mad?" "Yeah." Lily hugged her rabbit tighter. "That's not very nice." Daniel almost laughed, but it came out as something closer to a sob. He held his daughter and stared at the wall, at the calendar filled with events he could no longer afford, at the life he was going to have to rebuild from scratch. Again. The apartment felt smaller after Victoria left, like the walls had moved inward. Daniel sat on the couch long after Lily went back to her room, staring at his phone, at the email app he'd failed to open in time, at the entire architecture of his failure displayed in digital records. He'd worked for Victoria for 6 years, longer than he'd done almost anything else in his adult life except be Lily's father. The job had been stable, decent, something he was good at when he had the bandwidth to actually focus. Marketing strategy came naturally to him. He understood how to tell stories that made people care, how to find the emotional core of a brand and build campaigns around it. Victoria had recognized that talent early and promoted him twice. For a while, he'd been on track to become a creative director. That felt like a lifetime ago now. His phone buzzed. A text from his sister, Claire, who lived 3 states away and called every Sunday like clockwork. "How's my favorite niece?" Daniel stared at the message. He should tell her. She'd want to know. But the thought of saying the words out loud, "I got fired," made his chest ache. Claire had been his lifeline after Emma died, had flown out for 2 months to help with Lily, had sent money when things got tight, even though she had her own family to support. He couldn't ask her for more. Not again. "She's good. Obsessed with her new art set. How are the twins?" He sent the text and set the phone down, feeling like a coward. From Lily's room, he could hear her singing softly to herself, one of the songs from the movie they'd watched last weekend. The sound was pure and unself-conscious, the kind of happiness that belonged to someone who didn't yet know how fragile the world was. Daniel closed his eyes and let it wash over him. Emma would have known what to do. Emma had been the organized one, the planner, the person who kept spreadsheets for their budget and calendars for everything else. She'd been a nurse, brilliant and tireless, and she'd died in a car accident on her way home from a double shift 3 years ago. One moment she'd existed, solid and real and essential. The next, she was gone, and Daniel had been left holding their 5-year-old daughter and a future that no longer made sense. He'd thought he was managing. For the first year, people had been understanding. His boss, his coworkers, even clients. Everyone gave him space, expected less, forgave the cracks. But grief didn't follow a schedule. It didn't neatly resolve after 12 months, so you could get back to performing at full capacity. It lingered, shifted, became part of the infrastructure of your life. And somewhere along the way, the grace period ended. The world expected you to be functional again. Daniel had tried. He'd tried so hard, but every time he thought he had a handle on things, something would slip. Lily would get sick and need to be picked up from school. A teacher would call with concerns about her grades or her withdrawal from other kids. There'd be a school event he couldn't miss, a play, a recital, a field trip where she desperately wanted him to be a chaperone. And each time he chose her, which he always did and always would, work suffered. Deadlines got pushed, quality declined. His focus fractured into 1,000 pieces, none of them large enough to matter. Yesterday had been the breaking point. Lily had punched another student, something so unlike her that the school had demanded an immediate conference. Daniel had dropped everything and rushed over, his heart pounding, terrified that something was deeply wrong. It turned out the other kid had said something cruel about Lily not having a mom, and she'd snapped. She'd cried in the principal's office, apologizing over and over, and Daniel had held her and told her it was okay while drowning in guilt that she was carrying this pain, this absence, everywhere she went. By the time they got home, he'd been emotionally destroyed. He'd made her favorite dinner, grilled cheese and tomato soup, and they'd eaten together at the small kitchen table while she told him about the science project she wanted to do on butterflies. He'd helped her start sketching ideas, then tucked her into bed with her rabbit and 3 stories instead of the usual one. And the Callaway proposal, sitting in his drafts folder, had never crossed his mind again. Now he was unemployed. Daniel stood and walked to the kitchen, staring at the mess he hadn't had time to clean. Coffee pooled on the counter. Dishes from last night's dinner sat in the sink. The refrigerator hummed quietly, and when he opened it, he saw what he already knew. They had maybe 3 days of meals left, 4 if he stretched it. After that, he'd need to go shopping, which meant spending money he no longer had a reliable way to replace. 2 weeks of severance. That would cover rent and utilities for the month if he was careful. But after that, the clock started ticking in earnest. He could file for unemployment, start applying for jobs immediately. But the job market was brutal, especially for someone whose resume now included a termination. References would be complicated. Victoria certainly wouldn't give him a glowing recommendation. And even if he found something quickly, most places wanted you to start immediately, which meant figuring out childcare for Lily, which cost money he didn't have, which created a spiral he couldn't solve. He picked up his phone and opened his banking app. The numbers stared back at him, merciless and exact. Checking account, $1,247. Savings, $392. Credit card debt, $3,800. Daddy? He turned. Lily stood in the doorway, still in her pajamas, holding her rabbit by one ear. Hey, baby, what's up? Can we have pancakes? Daniel looked at his daughter, at her hopeful face, her messy curls, the trust in her eyes that he would take care of her, always. And something in him shifted, not into hope, exactly, into determination. Yeah, he said, forcing a smile. Pancakes sound perfect. Töyten. They spent the rest of the morning together. Daniel made pancakes with chocolate chips, Lily's favorite, and they ate at the table while she chattered about the butterfly project and whether they should get a pet caterpillar to watch it transform. He listened, asked questions, laughed at her jokes, and tried not to think about the email he needed to send to HR, or the bills that would come due in 2 weeks, or the fact that his entire professional identity had just been obliterated. After breakfast, they went to the park. It was cold, the kind of sharp late autumn air that bit at your skin. But Lily loved the playground near their building. She ran straight for the swings, and Daniel pushed her, his hands aching from the cold, while she shrieked with laughter and begged him to push higher. "Higher, Daddy! I want to touch the sky!" He pushed harder, watching her soar, and for a moment the weight lifted. This was what mattered. Not the job, not the money, not even the impossible logistics of survival. This, her laughter, her joy, the fact that she was still a child who believed in touching the sky. When she finally tired of the swings, they walked to the small pond at the edge of the park. There were ducks there, and Lily loved feeding them the old bread Daniel kept in a bag for exactly this purpose. She tore the slices into small pieces and threw them into the water, narrating the ducks' lives in elaborate detail. "That one's the dad," she said, pointing to a large mallard. "And that's the mom. And those little ones are the babies, but they're not babies anymore because they're too big. But the dad still takes care of them, because that's what dads do." Daniel's throat tightened. "Yeah," he said softly. "That's what dads do." They stayed until the bread ran out, then walked back slowly, Lily skipping ahead and occasionally running back to show him a particularly interesting rock or leaf. By the time they got home, it was almost noon. Lily wanted to work on her butterfly project, so Daniel set her up at the kitchen table with colored pencils and paper, while he finally reluctantly opened his laptop. His work email inbox was a minefield he wasn't ready to navigate. He opened a blank document instead and started writing a list. Immediate priorities. Call HR on Monday. Update resume. Contact recruiters. File for unemployment. Cut unnecessary expenses. Figure out childcare options. He stared at the list, feeling the weight of each item. Then he added one more. Talk to Lily about what's happening. She deserved to know, not all of it. She didn't need the details of his failure, but enough that she wasn't blindsided when things changed. He just didn't know how to explain it in a way that wouldn't scare her. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Hello? Daniel Harper?" The voice was professional, clipped. "Yes? This is Monica Chen from HR at Hale & Associates. Ms. Hale asked me to call and confirm some details about your termination." Daniel's stomach sank. "Okay. Your final paycheck will be direct deposited this Wednesday. You'll receive 2 weeks severance as outlined in your employment contract. Your health insurance will remain active through the end of the month. After that, you'll be eligible for COBRA continuation, but you'll need to pay the full premium yourself." Daniel did the math in his head. COBRA would cost more than he could afford. "Understood. You'll also need to return your company laptop and access badge by end of business on Monday. You can drop them off at reception." "I'll bring them by tomorrow," Daniel said. There was a pause. "Tomorrow's Sunday." "I know, but I'd rather get it done." Another pause, longer this time. "I'll let security know to expect you. Is there anything else I can help you with?" "No, thank you." Monica hung up without saying goodbye. Daniel set the phone down and stared at his laptop, his company laptop, which he'd need to wipe in return. He thought about all the files on it, the campaigns he'd built, the presentations he'd crafted, the years of work now reduced to property that didn't belong to him. "Daddy, how do you spell chrysalis?" He spelled it for her, watching as she carefully wrote the word at the top of her drawing. Her handwriting was getting better, more confident. Emma would have been proud. That night, after Lily was asleep, Daniel sat on the couch in the dark and let himself fall apart. Not loudly. He couldn't risk waking her, but thoroughly. He cried silently, his body shaking, his hands pressed over his mouth to keep the sound in. He cried for the job he'd lost, for the stability that had just evaporated, for the fear that he wouldn't be able to provide for his daughter. He cried for Emma, who should have been here, who would have known how to navigate this, who'd left him alone in a world that didn't forgive weakness. When he was empty, wrung out, he sat in the silence and made himself a promise. He would figure this out. He would find another job. He would keep Lily safe, fed, housed. He would not let her suffer for his failures. He didn't know how yet. but he would find a way. He had to. Sunday morning came too quickly. Daniel woke up on the couch, his neck stiff, his eyes swollen from crying. Lily was already awake, watching cartoons at a low volume, curled up in the armchair with her rabbit. She looked over when she heard him stir. "Morning, Daddy." "Morning, sweetheart." His voice was rough. He cleared his throat. "How long have you been up?" "I don't know. A little while." She turned back to the TV. "I was quiet so you could sleep." Guilt twisted in his chest. She shouldn't have to tiptoe around him. "Thank you, baby. That was very thoughtful." They had cereal for breakfast because Daniel didn't have the energy for anything more complicated. Afterward, he told Lily he needed to run a quick errand and asked if she wanted to come with him. She agreed enthusiastically. Any trip was an adventure when you were 8, and they got dressed and headed out. The Hale and Associates office was in a renovated historic building downtown, all exposed brick and tall windows. Daniel had always liked working there. It had felt creative, energizing. Now it just felt like the scene of a crime. Security let them in. The building was almost empty on a Sunday, just a few workaholics and the cleaning crew. Daniel led Lily to the elevator, carrying the laptop and badge in a canvas bag. She held his hand and looked around with wide eyes. "This is where you work?" she asked. "Worked," he corrected gently. "Not anymore." "Why not?" "I'll explain later, okay?" The elevator doors opened on the 3rd floor. The office was dark except for the emergency lighting. Daniel walked through the familiar space, the open-plan workspace, the conference rooms with their glass walls, the kitchen area where he'd made countless cups of coffee during late nights. He'd spent so much time here. It had been his second home. Now it was just a place he used to belong. He stopped at reception and set the laptop and badge on the desk. There was a return envelope waiting for him, already labeled with his name. He put the items inside and sealed it, feeling like he was closing a chapter of his life. "Can I see your desk?" Lily asked. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. They walked through the workspace to his cubicle in the corner. It was exactly as he'd left it on Friday. Coffee mug with a ring of dried residue at the bottom, a stack of file folders, a photo of Lily from last year's school picture day. He picked up the photo and slipped it into his pocket. Everything else could stay. "It's small," Lily observed. "Yeah," Daniel agreed. "It is." They were turning to leave when a light flicked on in one of the offices. Daniel froze. Through the glass wall, he could see Victoria at her desk, laptop open, papers spread around her. She looked up and saw them. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Victoria stood and walked out of her office, crossing the workspace toward them. She was dressed casually, jeans and a sweater, but she still carried herself with that same controlled authority. Her eyes went from Daniel to Lily and back again. "I wasn't expecting anyone else to be here," she said. "Just dropping off the laptop," Daniel replied, his voice carefully neutral. "We were about to leave." Victoria nodded slowly. She looked at Lily, who was staring at her with unfiltered curiosity. "You must be Daniel's daughter." "I'm Lily," she said. "I'm 8. "It's nice to meet you, Lily." Victoria's voice softened slightly. "Your dad talks about you a lot." "He does?" "All the time." Victoria's eyes flicked to Daniel. "Can I speak with you for a moment, alone?" Daniel looked down at Lily. "Can you wait by the elevator, sweetheart? I'll just be a minute." Lily nodded and skipped off, her shoes squeaking on the polished floor. Daniel watched her go, then turned back to Victoria. "What is it?" he asked. Victoria crossed her arms, then uncrossed them, looking uncomfortable. "I didn't sleep well last night," she admitted. "I kept thinking about yesterday, about showing up at your apartment like that. You had every right to be angry." "I did. I do." She paused. "But I also didn't give you a chance to explain. I didn't ask why things had fallen apart. I just decided you didn't care enough." Daniel felt something hot and painful rise in his throat. "I cared. I care. I just—" He stopped, forcing himself to stay composed. "It doesn't matter now." "Maybe it does." Victoria glanced toward the elevator, where Lily was pressing all the buttons and giggling. "She seems like a good kid." "She's the best kid." "And you're raising her alone." "Yes." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, less certain, more human. I lost my father when I was 9. My mother worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat. I remember what it was like, watching her try to be everything at once. She was exhausted all the time. She missed things. She couldn't always be there. She met Daniel's eyes. But she never stopped trying, and I never doubted that I was the most important thing in her world. Daniel didn't know what to say. I'm not taking back the termination, Victoria continued, but I'm sorry for how I handled it. You deserved better than that. Thank you, Daniel said quietly. Victoria nodded once, then turned and walked back to her office, closing the door behind her. Daniel stood there for a moment processing. Then he went to collect Lily, and they rode the elevator down in silence. On the drive home, Lily asked, "Is that lady still mad at you?" Daniel thought about it. "I think maybe she's just sad." "Why?" "Sometimes when people are disappointed, it comes out as anger, but underneath, they're really just sad that things didn't work out differently." Lily considered this seriously. "Are you sad?" "Yeah," Daniel admitted. "I am." She reached over and patted his arm. "It's okay to be sad, Daddy. That's what you always tell me." He smiled despite everything. "You're right. It is okay." When they got home, Lily went back to her butterfly project, and Daniel finally opened his laptop, his personal one this time, and started updating his resume. It felt mechanical, soulless. He listed his accomplishments, his skills, his experience, and tried to make 6 years of good work followed by 6 months of collapse sound like a narrative of growth and learning. His phone buzzed. An email from Monica in HR, confirming receipt of the laptop and badge. Attached was his final paycheck stub. He opened it and stared at the number. $3,847.22 after taxes and deductions. 2 weeks of severance and his final week's pay. It was more than nothing. It was also nowhere near enough. He closed the laptop and looked at Lily, still drawing butterflies at the kitchen table, completely absorbed. She looked up and smiled at him, and his heart broke and mended at the same time. "Hey, baby," he said. "We need to talk about something." She set down her colored pencil. "What?" "You know how I've been really busy with work lately, missing some of your stuff at school and being tired a lot?" She nodded. "Well, I made some mistakes at my job, big ones, and because of that, I'm not going to be working there anymore." Lily's face scrunched in confusion. "Did you get fired?" Daniel was surprised she knew the word. "Yeah, I did." "Is that bad?" "It's complicated. It means I need to find a new job. And until I do, money's going to be tight. We might have to be more careful about things for a while." "Like what things?" "Like going out to eat or buying new toys or—" He stopped, not wanting to scare her. "We'll figure it out together, okay? But I need you to know that no matter what happens, we're going to be fine. I'm going to take care of us." Lily thought about this for a moment, her expression serious. Then she said, "Can I still do my butterfly project?" Daniel almost laughed. "Yes, you can definitely still do your butterfly project." "Okay." She picked up her pencil again. "Then I think we'll be fine." And in that moment, sitting in their small kitchen with medical bills on the counter and an uncertain future stretching ahead, Daniel believed her. They would be fine. They had to be. The next 3 days moved with the strange, suspended quality of a life in freefall. Daniel woke up Monday morning without the alarm that had governed his existence for 6 years. And for a moment, he forgot. He reached for his phone to check his work email before remembering there was no work email to check anymore. The realization settled over him like a weight, and he lay there in the early morning darkness, listening to the sound of Lily breathing softly in her room down the hall. He got up anyway, made coffee, got Lily ready for school, packed her lunch with the same careful attention he always did. Sandwich cut into triangles, apple slices, the cookies she loved. They walked to the bus stop together, and she chattered about the spelling test she had that afternoon and whether butterflies could recognize their caterpillar friends after they transformed. He listened, responded, smiled, and felt the entire time like he was performing normalcy for an audience of one. "Have a great day, baby," he said when the bus pulled up. She hugged him tight around the waist. "You too, Daddy." He watched the bus pull away, yellow and bright in the gray morning, and then turned back toward the apartment with nowhere to go and nothing to do except confront the wreckage of his professional life. The apartment felt too quiet. Daniel sat at the kitchen table with his laptop and forced himself to start the process he'd been dreading. He opened LinkedIn and changed his status to open to work, feeling exposed and ashamed in equal measure. Then he started scrolling through job postings, quickly realizing how brutal the landscape was. Marketing manager positions wanted 10 years of experience and expertise in platforms he'd barely touched. Junior roles paid half what he'd been making and still required availability he couldn't promise. Remote positions were flooded with applicants. Everything required references. He spent 2 hours applying to jobs that felt either too senior or too junior, tailoring his resume and cover letter for each one, knowing that most would disappear into automated systems that would never surface them to an actual human. By noon, he'd submitted 8 applications and felt like he'd accomplished nothing. His phone rang. Claire. He considered not answering, but she'd just keep calling. He picked up. "Hey," he said, trying to sound normal. "Hey yourself. I'm calling early because the twins have a dentist appointment this afternoon, and I wanted to catch you. How's everything?" Daniel closed his laptop. "It's fine. Busy." "Busy good or busy stressful?" "Just busy." There was a pause. Claire knew him too well. "Daniel, what's wrong?" He almost told her. The words were right there, queued up and ready. But then he thought about her life. 2 kids, a husband who traveled constantly for work, a part-time teaching job she was already juggling. She didn't need his problems added to her load. "Nothing's wrong," he said. "Just tired. Lily had a thing at school last week and it threw me off." "What kind of thing?" "She got into a fight with another kid. Nothing serious, but I had to go in for a conference." "Lily got in a fight?" Claire sounded shocked. "Our Lily? The one who cries when she steps on ants?" "The kid said something about Emma. She punched him." "Good for her," Claire said fiercely. "Is she okay?" "She's fine. Embarrassed, but fine." "And you?" "I'm managing." Another pause, longer this time. "You'd tell me if you needed help, right? If things were really bad?" "Of course," Daniel lied. They talked for a few more minutes about nothing important, and then Claire had to go. After she hung up, Daniel sat with his phone in his hand, feeling the isolation settle around him like fog. He'd never been good at asking for help. Emma had always joked that he'd rather bleed out than admit he needed a bandage. She'd been right then, and apparently nothing had changed. He made himself a sandwich for lunch and ate it standing at the counter, staring at the calendar on the wall. Lily had a field trip next Friday. Parent-teacher conferences were in 2 weeks. Her birthday was in 6 weeks. He'd promised her a party this year, something small but special. That felt impossible now. His phone buzzed, an email. For a moment his heart leaped. Maybe one of the jobs had responded already. But it was from his landlord, a reminder that rent was due in 12 days. As if he could forget. Daniel spent the afternoon cleaning the apartment with manic energy, scrubbing counters and organizing closets and doing anything that felt productive. When Lily got home from school, he was elbow-deep in sorting through old boxes in the hall closet. "What are you doing?" she asked, dropping her backpack by the door. "Just cleaning up a bit. How was the spelling test?" "Easy. I got them all right except necessary, because I forgot the second C." She peered into the box he was sorting. "What's all that stuff?" "Just old things from before you were born. Want to help me go through it?" They spent the next hour sorting through the detritus of his previous life. Old textbooks from college, CDs from bands he'd loved in his 20s, a shoebox full of concert tickets and movie stubs, each one a memory of a night with Emma. Lily picked through it all with fascination, asking questions about everything. "Who's this?" she asked, holding up a photo of Daniel and Emma at a friend's wedding, both of them young and laughing. "That's your mom and me, before we had you." Lily studied the photo carefully. "You look really happy." "We were." She set the photo down gently and picked up something else, a medal on a ribbon, tarnished with age. "What's this?" Daniel took it from her, surprised he'd forgotten it was in there. "That's from a marketing competition I won in college. My team developed a campaign for a local nonprofit, and we took first place in the regional finals." "You won a prize for marketing?" "Yeah, a long time ago." "Are you good at marketing?" The question was so innocent, so direct, that it caught him off guard. "I used to be," he said quietly. "I used to be really good at it. Lily looked at him with those serious brown eyes. Then why don't you do it anymore? I do. I did. That was my job. The one you got fired from? Yeah. She thought about this, turning the metal over in her small hands. If you were really good at it, why did they fire you? Daniel sat back on his heels, trying to find an answer that was honest but age-appropriate. Because being good at something isn't enough if you can't show up when people need you to. And I kept not showing up because I was choosing to be with you instead. So you got fired because of me? The devastation in her voice made his chest ache. No, baby, no. I got fired because I didn't figure out how to do both things well. That's on me, not you. You are the most important thing in the world to me, and I would make the same choice every single time. Lily was quiet for a moment, still holding the medal. Then she handed it back to him. I think you should keep this, to remember that you're really good at marketing. He took it, his throat tight. Thank you, sweetheart. That night, after Lily was asleep, Daniel sat at the kitchen table with the medal in front of him and his laptop open. He'd submitted 3 more applications that afternoon, each one feeling more futile than the last. His inbox was empty except for automated responses thanking him for his interest and informing him that they'd received a high volume of applications. Translation: don't hold your breath. He opened his banking app and ran the numbers again, even though he'd already memorized them. The severance check had hit that afternoon. Combined with what he already had, his total liquid assets were $5,239.22. Rent was $1,850. Utilities averaged $200. Groceries for 2 weeks, if he was careful, ran about $150. Lily's school tuition was $400 a month. He had her next therapy session coming up. She'd been seeing a child psychologist since Emma died, and it was the one expense he refused to cut, which was $120 with insurance. Car insurance was $95. Phone bill was $65. He did the math 3 times, hoping it would change. It didn't. Even being conservative, he had maybe 6 weeks before he was in serious trouble. 2 months if he started making hard choices about what to pay and what to let slide. His phone buzzed. A text from a number he didn't recognize. Daniel, this is Victoria. I have a proposal for you. Can you meet me for coffee tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. at Anthem on 5th? He stared at the message, trying to parse what it could mean. A proposal. Not a job offer. She would have said that. Maybe a reference after all? Or perhaps she wanted to outline what she'd be willing to say if potential employers called. Either way, he couldn't afford to ignore it. I'll be there, he typed back. Her response came immediately. Good. See you then. Daniel set the phone down and stared at the medal on the table, at his younger self's achievement, at the evidence that he'd once been capable of excellence. He tried to remember what that had felt like, the confidence, the clarity, the sense that he was building towards something. It felt like a different person's life. He went to bed but didn't sleep. His mind churned through possibilities, scenarios, worst-case outcomes. By the time his alarm went off at 6, he'd gotten maybe 3 hours of broken rest and felt like he'd been awake for days. Getting Lily ready for school took longer than usual. She couldn't find her favorite hair tie, then decided she hated the outfit she'd picked out the night before. Then remembered at the last minute that she needed to bring in something for show and tell that started with the letter M. They settled on the medal from the box, which she clutched proudly all the way to the bus stop. I'm going to tell everyone my dad won this for being really smart, she announced. You don't have to do that, baby. But I want to. I'm proud of you. The words hit him like a physical blow. He hugged her tight before she got on the bus, breathing in the smell of her strawberry shampoo, and then watched her disappear into her seat with the medal held carefully in both hands. Anthem Coffee was the kind of place Victoria would choose. Minimalist design, excellent espresso, prices that made Daniel wince. He arrived 10 minutes early and ordered a regular coffee he couldn't really afford, then claimed a table in the back corner. His leg bounced under the table, nervous energy with nowhere to go. Victoria arrived exactly on time, because of course she did. She was dressed for the office in tailored pants and a silk blouse, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. She ordered something complicated at the counter, then joined him at the table. Thank you for coming, she said, settling into her chair with her usual controlled grace. Of course. Daniel wrapped his hands around his coffee cup. You said you had a proposal? I do, but first I want to apologize. That wasn't what he'd expected. For what? For showing up at your apartment the way I did. For firing you in front of your daughter. For not giving you a chance to explain what was happening in your life before I made a decision that affected both of you. She met his eyes directly. It was unprofessional and unkind, and I'm sorry. Daniel didn't know what to say. You had a right to be angry. Anger doesn't excuse cruelty. She paused as the barista brought over her drink. I've been thinking a lot since Saturday. About what I saw in your apartment, about your daughter, about the conversation we had at the office on Sunday. Okay, Daniel said carefully. Victoria took a sip of her coffee, then set it down with deliberate precision. I told you about my mother. What I didn't tell you is that she eventually lost one of those 3 jobs because she kept missing shifts when I was sick, or when the school called. Her boss was understanding at first, but eventually the business needed reliability more than it needed her. She found something else, but it paid less. We struggled even more than before. Daniel felt something shift in the air between them. I'm sorry that happened to her. I'm not telling you this to make you feel sorry for her. I'm telling you because I've spent the last 3 days realizing that I became the boss who fired her. Victoria's voice was steady, but there was something underneath it. Regret, maybe, or recognition. I looked at your situation and saw only the business impact. I didn't see the person. I didn't see what you were actually trying to hold together. You run a company, Daniel said. You have to make hard decisions. I do, but I also have the freedom to make different decisions, to structure things differently, to recognize that talent doesn't disappear just because someone's circumstances become complicated. She leaned forward slightly. You're a good marketer, Daniel. You have instincts for storytelling that most people don't. In the 6 years you worked for me, you created some of the best campaigns we've ever run. The Riverside Healthcare rebrand, the launch strategy for Meridian Tech, those were yours. They won us clients and awards and revenue. Before I started falling apart. Before you started trying to do an impossible job alone while grieving your wife and raising a child. Victoria's correction was sharp, but not unkind. That's not falling apart. That's being human under impossible circumstances. Daniel felt his throat tighten. Why are you telling me this? Because I have a proposal, and I need you to actually hear it instead of immediately dismissing it as charity. He nodded, not trusting his voice. Victoria pulled a folder from her bag and set it on the table between them. I don't want you back in the office. The structure there doesn't work for your life, and I'm not going to pretend it does. But I do want your skills, your creativity, your strategic thinking. She opened the folder. Inside was a contract, several pages long. Daniel stared at it without comprehending. I'm offering you a contract position, Victoria continued. Fully remote, project-based. You work on specific campaigns as they come up, on your own timeline, with deadlines we agree on together. No required office hours. No mandatory meetings unless they're truly essential, and those can be virtual. You deliver the work, I pay you for it. That's it. Daniel's mind raced. What's the catch? No catch. But it's not a full-time salary either. It's per project compensation. Some months you might make what you were making before. Some months you might make half that. It's variable based on workload. Why would you do this? Because I need good work, and you need flexibility. And because I've realized that the traditional employment model doesn't actually serve either of us as well as it could. Victoria tapped the contract. This is me trying something different, trying to structure work around human reality instead of pretending humans can just conform to whatever structure corporations prefer. Daniel picked up the contract with shaking hands. The numbers made his vision blur. The per-project rates were generous, more than fair. If he could land even 2 or 3 projects a month, he could survive. Maybe more than survive. There's one condition, Victoria said. You have to be honest with me about your capacity. If you take on a project and realize you can't deliver, you tell me immediately. We problem solve together or we reassign it. No more silent struggling until everything explodes. Can you do that? Yes, Daniel said, his voice rough. I can do that. Then read the contract. Take it to a lawyer if you want. But if you're willing, I'd like you to start next week. We have a campaign for a local nonprofit that needs a complete communications strategy. It's not huge, but it's meaningful work. And it's yours if you want it. Daniel read through the contract twice, barely able to focus through the relief flooding his system. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't the stability of a salaried position. But it was real work, fairly compensated, structured around the reality of his life instead of against it. He looked up at Victoria, who was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Why are you really doing this?" She considered the question seriously. "Because my mother deserved better than she got, and because I can afford to take a chance on something that might actually work better for everyone involved. And because—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Because I saw your daughter holding that rabbit, and I saw you trying to hold everything together, and I remembered what it was like to be the kid watching her parent break down under impossible weight. I can't fix everything, but I can fix this one thing. So I am." Daniel felt something hot behind his eyes. He blinked it away. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. The work still has to be excellent. I still have standards. I'm just willing to be flexible about how we meet them. I won't let you down." "I know you won't." Victoria stood, gathering her coat. "Email me by Friday if you want to move forward. If you do, we'll set up a call to discuss the nonprofit project." She left, her coffee barely touched, and Daniel sat alone at the table with the contract in front of him and something that felt dangerously close to hope expanding in his chest. He stayed there for another 20 minutes, reading the contract over and over, looking for the trap or the fine print or the thing that would make it collapse. But it was straightforward, clear, exactly what she'd promised. A lifeline extended without strings, without judgment, without requiring him to be anyone other than who he was. When he finally left the coffee shop, the morning had turned bright and cold, the kind of autumn day that felt like possibility. Daniel walked to his car and sat behind the wheel for a long moment before starting the engine. His phone buzzed. A text from Lily's school. "Hi, Mr. Harper. Just wanted to let you know Lily did wonderfully in show and tell today. She was so proud talking about your medal. Have a great day." Daniel read the message 3 times, then pressed his forehead against the steering wheel and let himself cry. Not from despair this time, but from the overwhelming relief of discovering that sometimes, when you're falling, someone reaches out and catches you. He drove home in a daze, his mind already turning over the nonprofit campaign Victoria had mentioned, ideas beginning to form. When he got back to the apartment, he made himself lunch and sat down at the kitchen table with his laptop. He pulled up the contract Victoria had given him and read through it one more time, carefully, making notes. Then he opened a new email. "Victoria, thank you for the opportunity and for your honesty this morning. I'd like to accept the contract position. I'm ready to start whenever you need me. I also want to say that I'm sorry for not being transparent about what I was dealing with. You deserve to know what was affecting my performance, and I should have trusted you enough to tell you. I won't make that mistake again. Looking forward to discussing the nonprofit project. Daniel." He hit send before he could second-guess himself, then closed the laptop and went to stand at the window, looking out at the city. Somewhere out there, Lily was learning fractions or reading about butterflies or laughing with friends. Somewhere out there, his life was continuing, and for the first time in months, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he could actually manage it. His phone buzzed almost immediately. Victoria's response was characteristically brief. "Good. I'll send the project details this evening." "Welcome back." Daniel smiled, something loosening in his chest that had been tight for so long he'd forgotten it was there. He picked up the medal from where Lily had left it that morning and set it on the shelf above his desk, a reminder of who he'd been and who he might still become. Then he got to work. The project details arrived at 6:30 that evening, just as Daniel was helping Lily with her math homework. His phone chimed and he glanced at it to see an email from Victoria with 3 attachments and a subject line that read, "Harmony House Campaign. Let's talk tomorrow at 2 p.m. "Daddy, you're not paying attention," Lily complained, tapping her pencil against the workbook. "Is 4 times 7 24 or 28? 28, Daniel said absently, already opening the email. "You didn't even look at the problem." He forced himself to close his phone and focus on her. "You're right. I'm sorry. Let's do this together, okay? Show me what you're working on." They finished the homework together, Daniel making a conscious effort to be fully present, even though part of his mind was already racing ahead to the project waiting in his inbox. After Lily went to bed, He finally allowed himself to dive in properly. He poured a cup of coffee, settled at the kitchen table, and opened Victoria's email on his laptop. The first attachment was a brief about Harmony House, a local nonprofit that provided temporary housing and support services for women and children escaping domestic violence. They'd been operating for 15 years on minimal funding and word-of-mouth referrals, but they'd recently received a significant grant and wanted to expand their reach. They needed a complete communication strategy, including a rebrand, a digital presence overhaul, and a community awareness campaign. The second attachment was their current marketing materials, such as they were. A basic website that looked like it hadn't been updated since 2015, a pamphlet with clip art and dense paragraphs of text, a Facebook page that posted sporadically and had fewer than 300 followers. Daniel could see immediately why they needed help. The third attachment was Victoria's notes on what she envisioned for the project. She wanted something that honored the dignity and strength of the women they served while being accessible enough to drive donations and volunteer engagement. She'd outlined a timeline of 8 weeks and a budget that made Daniel's eyes widen. This wasn't a small project, this was a complete transformation. He read through everything twice, then started making notes. Ideas began flowing faster than he could type them. A visual identity built around the concept of home and healing. A storytelling campaign centered on the women's voices, their resilience, their futures rather than their trauma. A social media strategy focused on education and engagement rather than pity. A volunteer recruitment program. A donor cultivation plan. He worked until after midnight, filling a document with concepts and frameworks and the beginning of something that felt important. When he finally closed the laptop, his coffee had gone cold and his neck ached from hunching over the keyboard. But for the first time in months, he felt the particular satisfaction of creative work well done. He'd forgotten what this felt like, the flow state, the problem solving, the sense of building something meaningful from nothing. He went to bed and actually slept. The next morning, Daniel got Lily off to school and spent the hours before his call with Victoria refining his notes into a preliminary strategy document. At exactly 2 o'clock, his phone rang with a video call request. Victoria's face appeared on the screen, her office visible behind her. "Daniel, good to see you." "You too. Thanks for sending the materials. What do you think? Is it something you can work with?" "Absolutely. I actually spent last night putting together some initial concepts. Do you want me to share my screen?" "Please." Daniel walked her through his ideas, watching her face for reactions. She listened intently, occasionally nodding or making notes, but mostly just absorbing. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "This is excellent," she said finally. "This is exactly the kind of strategic thinking I was hoping for. The storytelling approach especially, that's the right instinct. These women don't need to be reduced to their worst experiences. They need to be seen as whole people building whole futures." "That's what I thought. The current materials are all crisis-focused, which makes sense for immediate intervention, but it doesn't give people a compelling reason to engage long-term. If we shift the narrative to transformation and community, we can build something sustainable." Victoria smiled, small but genuine. "I'm sending you the full creative brief this afternoon. I'll also connect you with Melissa Chen, the executive director at Harmony House. She'll be your main point of contact. Plan to have an initial strategy presentation ready in 2 weeks. We'll present it to their board together." Together? "You didn't think I was going to make you do this completely alone, did you? I'll handle the business development side and client relationship management. You focus on the creative strategy and execution. We collaborate on the big decisions." Relief washed over him. "That works." "Good. One more thing. I'm paying you 50% upfront for this project. The invoice template is in the contract folder. Send it to me by end of week, and I'll process it immediately." Daniel did the math quickly. 50% upfront on a project this size was more than his monthly salary used to be. "Victoria, that's standard for contract work of this scope," she interrupted. "Don't argue with me about money, Daniel. Just do excellent work, and we'll both be happy." After the call ended, Daniel sat staring at his laptop, trying to process what had just happened. He had a real project, a meaningful project, with a client who mattered and work that could actually make a difference. And he was getting paid fairly for it, on terms that respected his circumstances. He allowed himself 5 minutes to feel the relief, the gratitude, the sheer improbability of it all. Then he got to work. The next 2 weeks fell into a rhythm that felt almost miraculous after months of chaos. Daniel worked during school hours, focusing intensely while Lily was away, and then shutting down his laptop the moment she got home. He cooked dinner, helped with homework, read bedtime stories, and then worked again for a few hours after she went to sleep. It was still exhausting, but it was sustainable exhaustion, the kind that came from productive effort rather than constant crisis management. He had his first call with Melissa Chen from Harmony House 3 days into the project. She was warm, energetic, and deeply committed to the organization's mission. She'd founded Harmony House after leaving an abusive marriage with her 2 young children and nowhere to go. Now, 15 years later, she ran a program that housed up to 12 families at a time and had helped hundreds of women rebuild their lives. I'll be honest, Melissa said during their video call, marketing has never been our strength. We've survived on referrals from social workers and police departments, but we know we're not reaching everyone who needs us. And we know we're leaving money on the table from donors who would support us if they just knew we existed. That's exactly what we're going to fix, Daniel assured her. I'm putting together a strategy that will help you reach the women who need you and the donors who want to help. But I need your input on something important. How do we tell your story in a way that honors the women you serve? I don't want this campaign to be exploitative or trauma-focused. Melissa's expression softened. Thank you for asking that. A lot of people want the dramatic rescue stories, the before and after transformations. But our women are so much more than their worst moments. They're mothers and professionals and artists and fighters. I'd love to see a campaign that shows that complexity. Then that's what we'll build. They talked for over an hour, and by the end, Daniel had pages of notes and a clear vision of what Harmony House needed. He spent the weekend developing that vision into a full presentation, working late into the nights after Lily was asleep, fueled by coffee and a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. On Sunday afternoon, Lily noticed the change in him. They were at the park, feeding the ducks again, when she looked up at him and said, "You seem happy, Daddy." "Do I?" "Yeah, you smile more now, and you're not sad all the time." The observation hit him harder than he expected. "I didn't realize I was sad all the time." "Not all the time," she corrected, tearing bread into small pieces with careful precision. "But a lot, after Mommy died. And then when you lost your job. But now, you're different." "I got a new job," he explained. "Kind of. It's not the same as before, but it's good work. Important work." "What kind of work?" "I'm helping a place that helps families who are having a hard time, making sure people know about them so they can help more families." Lily threw bread to the ducks, watching them scramble for it. "That's nice. Helping people is good." "Yeah, baby, it is." She leaned against his side and he wrapped his arm around her. They stayed like that for a while, watching the ducks and the autumn leaves floating on the pond's surface, and Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Contentment. Not happiness exactly, because there was still too much uncertainty for that, but a quiet sense that maybe things were actually going to be okay. The presentation to Harmony House's board was scheduled for a Thursday evening. Victoria met Daniel at her office an hour beforehand to run through the final version together. He dressed carefully, business casual, the best balance he could strike between professional and approachable, and brought his laptop and a portfolio of visual mock-ups he'd created. "Nervous?" Victoria asked as they settled into a conference room. "Terrified," Daniel admitted. "It's been months since I presented to a client. I feel out of practice." "You'll be fine. I've seen the presentation. It's strong work, Daniel. Just trust yourself." They went through it one more time, Victoria offering small refinements and strategic notes. By the time they needed to leave for Harmony House, Daniel felt as prepared as he was going to get. Harmony House was located in a converted Victorian home in a quiet neighborhood, painted a soft yellow with white trim. It looked like a real home, which Daniel suspected was intentional. Melissa met them at the door with a warm smile. "You must be Daniel. It's so good to finally meet you in person." She shook his hand, then turned to Victoria. "And Victoria, thank you for making the time. Come in, everyone's already here." The board consisted of 7 people gathered around a large dining table in what had probably once been a formal living room. They ranged in age from late 20s to mid-60s, and Melissa introduced them quickly: a lawyer, a therapist, a banker, a retired teacher, a small business owner, a nonprofit consultant, and a woman named Sarah who'd lived at Harmony House 5 years ago and was now a paralegal. They all looked at Daniel with varying degrees of curiosity and skepticism. Victoria took the lead on introductions. Thank you all for meeting with us this evening. As Melissa mentioned, we've been developing a comprehensive communication strategy for Harmony House. Daniel Harper, one of our senior strategists, has been leading this project. Daniel, the floor is yours. He connected his laptop to the projector Melissa had set up and pulled up his presentation. His hands were shaking slightly, but his voice came out steady. Good evening. Over the past 2 weeks, I've had the privilege of learning about the incredible work Harmony House does. What struck me most isn't just the housing and services you provide. It's the dignity and respect you offer women at a time when they need it most. You don't see them as victims to be rescued. You see them as people with agency and potential who need support to build the futures they deserve. He saw several board members nodding. Sarah, the former resident, was watching him intently. But here's the challenge. Most people in this city have no idea you exist. Your current online presence reaches fewer than 500 people. Your website gets about 20 visitors a month. And your donor base, while loyal, hasn't grown significantly in 3 years. You're doing transformational work in the shadows, and that needs to change. He clicked to the next slide, which showed the current Harmony House materials side by side with his proposed rebrand. This is where you are, and this is where I think you should be. He walked them through the entire strategy over the next 45 minutes. A new visual identity centered around warmth and strength. A website redesign focused on storytelling and easy navigation. A social media strategy that combined education about domestic violence with celebration of the women's achievements. A community partnership program that would bring in volunteers and resources. A donor cultivation plan that included regular updates and impact reporting. And at the heart of it all, a narrative campaign built around the voices of the women themselves. I want to be clear about something, Daniel said as he reached the final section. This campaign will not exploit trauma. We won't be sharing graphic stories of abuse or using shock tactics to drive donations. Instead, we'll be highlighting resilience, community, and transformation. We'll be showing people the full humanity of the women you serve, their strengths, their goals, their contributions to this community, because that's what will build sustainable support. When he finished, the room was quiet. Then Sarah, the former resident, spoke up. Can I ask you something? Her voice was soft but firm. Of course. Why do you care about this? I mean, you're a marketing guy. You could be working on campaigns for tech companies or restaurants or whatever. Why does a domestic violence shelter matter to you? Daniel hadn't expected the question, but he appreciated its directness. Honestly, because I know what it's like to need help and not know how to ask for it. I lost my wife 3 years ago, and I've been raising my daughter alone since then. For a long time, I thought I had to do everything myself, that asking for support was weakness. I struggled until I broke, and even then, I tried to hide it. What Harmony House does, creating a space where women can be vulnerable and strong at the same time, where they can ask for help and receive it with dignity, that matters to me. Because everyone deserves that. Everyone deserves a place where they can fall apart safely and put themselves back together. Sarah's eyes were bright. She nodded slowly. Okay, that's a good answer. The banker, a stern-looking woman in her 50s, spoke next. The budget you've outlined is significant. How do we know this will generate a return on investment? Victoria fielded that one. We're proposing a phased approach. We implement the foundational elements first, the rebrand and website, and measure engagement before expanding to the full campaign. We build proof of concept before asking you to commit to the larger budget. And Daniel and I will be providing monthly reports on every metric that matters: web traffic, social media engagement, volunteer applications, donation growth. You'll have complete transparency. They spent another 30 minutes answering questions, some skeptical, some enthusiastic. By the time the presentation ended, Daniel felt wrung out, but cautiously optimistic. The board asked them to step outside while they discussed. He and Victoria waited in the hallway, and Melissa brought them coffee. You did beautifully, she said warmly. I think you won Sarah over, and once Sarah's on board, the others usually follow. She has moral authority here that the rest of us don't. I meant what I said, Daniel told her. about dignity and respect. That has to be the foundation of everything. I know you did. I could tell. 20 minutes later, they were called back in. The board chair, the retired teacher, spoke for the group. We've discussed your proposal, and we're prepared to move forward with the initial phase. We'd like to see the rebrand and website completed first, with clear metrics on engagement. If those meet our benchmarks, we'll authorize the full campaign budget. Relief flooded through Daniel. Victoria shook hands with the board chair while Daniel tried to keep his expression professional instead of jubilant. As they walked back to their cars afterward, Victoria turned to him with a smile that reached her eyes for the first time since he'd known her. That was exceptional work, Daniel. The way you connected with them, the way you articulated the vision, that's why I wanted you on this project. Thank you for the opportunity. Really. This matters to me. I can tell. And that's going to make all the difference. She paused by her car. Take tomorrow off. Spend it with your daughter. You've earned it. And the real work starts next week. Daniel drove home feeling lighter than he had in months. When he got back to the apartment, Lily was already asleep. His neighbor, Mrs. Chen, had watched her for the evening, but he went to her room and sat by her bed for a while, watching her breathe. She had Emma's nose, her delicate features, but she had his determination, his stubbornness. She was going to be okay. They were both going to be okay. He texted Claire before he went to bed, finally ready to tell her the truth. Hey, I need to tell you something. I got fired a few weeks ago. It was bad for a minute, but I landed a contract position that's actually better for our situation. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I was embarrassed. Her response came through within minutes, even though it was late. Oh, Daniel, I wish you'd told me. Are you really okay? Do you need anything? I'm actually okay. Better than okay. Just wanted you to know. Love you. Love you too. Call me this weekend. I want to hear everything. The next morning, Daniel kept his promise to himself and to Victoria. He didn't open his laptop. Instead, he made pancakes with Lily, chocolate chips arranged in a smiley face. They went to the Natural History Museum, something they hadn't done in months because the admission price had felt too steep. They looked at dinosaurs and minerals and the butterfly exhibit, Lily taking notes in a little notebook for her school project. They had lunch in the museum cafe, and Daniel didn't even calculate the cost. This is the best day, Lily announced over her grilled cheese. Yeah, you're not checking your phone every 5 minutes. You're just here. The observation stung a little, but she was right. I'm sorry I've been so distracted. It's okay. You had a lot on your mind, but I like it better when you're here, not just body here. Daniel reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Me too, baby. Me too. They spent the afternoon at the park, then came home and made dinner together, spaghetti with sauce from a jar and a salad Lily helped prepare. After dinner, they worked on her butterfly project, creating a poster board with all her research and drawings. She was convinced that butterflies remembered being caterpillars, even though Daniel gently suggested that might not be scientifically accurate. But how do they know? She insisted. Maybe they remember everything and they're just happy they can fly now. Maybe, he conceded. That's a nice thought. I think if I was a caterpillar and then I became a butterfly, I'd remember. I'd remember crawling around and eating leaves, and then I'd be grateful that I got wings. Daniel looked at his daughter, at her serious expression and her absolute certainty, and felt something shift in his chest. Maybe transformation wasn't about forgetting who you'd been. Maybe it was about carrying those experiences forward and being grateful for the wings that let you rise above them. You're pretty wise for 8 years old, he said. She grinned. I know. That weekend, Daniel started the real work on the Harmony House rebrand. He created mood boards and color palettes and typography studies. He sketched logo concepts and wireframes for the website. He wrote copy that centered dignity and strength, that invited people into the story without exploiting pain. He worked steadily, methodically, with the kind of focused attention he'd thought he'd lost. On Sunday evening, he sent Victoria an update email with his progress. Her response came back within an hour. This is beautiful work. Keep going. He did. Over the next 2 weeks, the rebrand took shape, a logo that suggested both shelter and growth, a stylized house with branches growing from its roof, reaching upward, a color palette of warm earth tones that felt safe and grounded, typography that was clean and modern but approachable. website copy that told stories of transformation without graphic detail, that honored complexity and celebrated resilience. He presented the rebrand to Melissa first, wanting her approval before taking it to the board. They met over video call on a Wednesday afternoon, and he walked her through every element, explaining his choices and inviting her feedback. When he finished, Melissa was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, her voice thick, "This is exactly right. This is exactly what we needed. You understood us, Daniel. You really understood what we're trying to do here. I'm glad. This work matters, and it deserved to be treated with care. You've done that. More than that. You've given us a way to tell our story that feels true." The board approved the rebrand unanimously the following week. Victoria secured approval for the website development budget, and Daniel began working with the developer to bring his designs to life. They targeted a launch date 6 weeks out, with a soft opening to current supporters followed by a broader community awareness campaign. As the weeks passed, Daniel fell into a sustainable rhythm. He worked during school hours, present and focused. He spent evenings and weekends with Lily, actually engaged instead of just physically present. He delivered work on time, communicated proactively when he needed flexibility, and built a collaborative relationship with Victoria that felt more like partnership than employment. Money was still tight, but it was manageable. The Harmony House project had bought him breathing room, and Victoria had already mentioned 2 more potential clients who might need his services. He wasn't secure yet, but he could see a path toward security. One evening in late November, as Daniel was tucking Lily into bed, she looked up at him with those serious brown eyes and said, "Daddy, are we going to be okay?" "Yeah, baby, we're going to be okay. Promise?" "I promise. Things were really hard for a while, but they're getting better. We're figuring it out." She thought about this, hugging her rabbit close. "I'm glad. I like it better when you're not sad." "Me too. Do you think Mommy would be proud of us?" The question caught him off guard. They didn't talk about Emma as much as they used to, not because they'd forgotten, but because the grief had become part of the landscape rather than the defining feature. "I think she'd be very proud of you, and probably proud of me for finally figuring some things out." "I think so too." Lily yawned, settling deeper into her pillow. "Night, Daddy." "Night, sweetheart." He kissed her forehead and turned off the light, leaving the door cracked the way she liked. Then he went back to the kitchen and opened his laptop, not to work but to look at the calendar. Lily's birthday was in 3 weeks. He'd promised her a party, and for the first time he actually believed he could deliver on that promise. He started a list of ideas, simple but special, and as he typed, he realized he was smiling. The party planning became Daniel's evening project, something he worked on after Lily went to sleep, researching ideas that would make her 9th birthday special without breaking the budget he'd carefully reconstructed. He settled on a small gathering at the apartment. 6 of her closest friends from school, pizza, a homemade cake, and a craft activity where they could make butterfly wings from wire hangers and tissue paper. Simple, meaningful, within reach. But first, he had to get through the Harmony House website launch. The developer had delivered the final build 3 days ahead of schedule, and Daniel spent a frantic 48 hours reviewing every page, every link, every word of copy. He tested it on his laptop, on his phone, on Mrs. Chen's tablet when she offered to let him borrow it. He wanted it to be perfect, not because perfection mattered to his ego, but because the women who would find this site deserved excellence. The launch was scheduled for a Monday morning in early December. Melissa had coordinated with local domestic violence advocates and social service agencies to spread the word. Victoria had reached out to her media contacts to see if anyone would cover the story. Daniel had created social media content ready to deploy across multiple platforms. Everything was aligned, prepared, waiting. Sunday night, he couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios. What if the site crashed under traffic? What if he'd missed a critical error? What if the message didn't land the way he intended? At 2 in the morning, he gave up on sleep and went to the kitchen, making tea he didn't really want just to have something to do with his hands. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. "Can't sleep either. Stop worrying. It's going to be great." He smiled despite his anxiety and typed back, "How did you know I was awake?" "Because I know what it's like the night before a major launch. Trust the work. You've done everything right. Thanks. See you tomorrow. Get some sleep." He tried. Around 4, exhaustion finally dragged him under for a few restless hours. When his alarm went off at 6:30, he felt like he'd been awake the entire time. He got Lily ready for school on autopilot, barely registering her chatter about a quiz she had later. At the bus stop, she noticed his distraction. "Daddy, you look tired." "Just didn't sleep great. Big day at work." "Is it the Helping Families project?" "Yeah, baby. We're launching the new website today. It's a big deal." She squeezed his hand. "I hope it goes good." "Me too." After she left for school, Daniel went back to the apartment and tried to eat breakfast. His stomach rejected the idea. He drank coffee instead, too much of it, and opened his laptop to monitor the site. Victoria had scheduled a team call for 9 o'clock to coordinate the launch activities. At 8:55, he logged into the video conference. Victoria appeared on screen, professionally dressed as always, but he could see the excitement in her eyes. Melissa joined moments later, practically vibrating with nervous energy. The developer was there too, calm and technical, ready to handle any issues. "Good morning, everyone," Victoria said. "Melissa, how are we feeling?" "Terrified and excited in equal measure," Melissa admitted. "I've been refreshing the old website all morning like it's going to magically change before we flip the switch." "It's going to be better than magic," Daniel assured her. "It's going to be real." At exactly 9 o'clock, the developer pushed the new site live. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Melissa refreshed her browser, and the new Harmony House homepage loaded. Clean, warm, inviting, everything Daniel had envisioned. She made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It's so beautiful." Daniel felt his throat tighten. "Go ahead and click through the pages. Make sure everything works." They spent the next 15 minutes testing functionality while the developer monitored traffic and performance. Everything worked smoothly. The donation page processed test transactions without issue. The volunteer application form submitted correctly. The resource pages loaded quickly, even on mobile connections. It was functioning exactly as designed. "Okay," Victoria said, satisfaction clear in her voice. "Let's start spreading the word. Melissa, send your email to the advocacy network. Daniel, deploy the social media content. I'm reaching out to media contacts now. Let's see what happens." What happened exceeded every projection Daniel had made. Within the first hour, the site had over 300 visitors. By noon, that number had quadrupled. The local news picked up the story, running a segment about the rebrand during their evening broadcast. A popular lifestyle blogger in the city shared the website on her Instagram, which had over 50,000 followers. Donation notifications started coming in. $20, $50, $100. Someone gave $500 with a note that said, "Thank you for being there for women who need you." Daniel monitored it all from his kitchen table, watching the analytics dashboard and feeling something he hadn't experienced in his career before. The sense that his work was directly, measurably changing lives. Every new visitor was potentially a woman who needed help finding it. Every donation was resources that would keep families safe. Every volunteer application was another person willing to stand in the gap. Lily came home from school to find him still glued to his laptop. "Did your project go good?" she asked, dropping her backpack by the door. "It went really good, baby. Better than I hoped." "Can I see?" He turned the laptop so she could see the website. She studied it seriously, scrolling through the pages with careful attention. "It's pretty," she said, "and it looks like it helps people." "That's the goal." "Then you did a good job, Daddy." He pulled her into a hug, overwhelmed by how much her approval meant. "Thank you, sweetheart." That evening, Melissa called him, her voice thick with emotion. "Daniel, I don't know how to thank you. We've had 12 women reach out through the website today. 12. Some asking for help, some asking how they can volunteer, one asking if we can do a presentation at our company about domestic violence awareness. This is more engagement than we've seen in months." "That's incredible, Melissa. But you built something worth finding. I just helped people find it." "You did more than that. You gave us our voice back. You helped us tell our story in a way that honors everyone involved. That matters more than you know." After they hung up, Daniel sat with his laptop closed, letting the reality sink in. He'd built something good, something that mattered, And he'd done it while being present for his daughter, while maintaining his boundaries, while taking care of himself. The impossible balance he'd been chasing for months suddenly felt achievable. His phone rang. Victoria. "I wanted to call and say congratulations," she said without preamble. "This launch exceeded every metric we discussed. The board is thrilled, Melissa is over the moon, and I have 2 other nonprofits who saw the coverage and want to talk about similar projects." "That's amazing." "It is. But Daniel, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." His stomach tightened. "Okay. Are you happy with this arrangement? The contract work, the project-based structure? Or would you rather have something more stable?" He thought carefully before answering. "A month ago, I would have said I wanted stability above everything else. But now? This works. It works really well. I can be present for Lily, I can do good work, and I don't have to sacrifice one for the other. If you're offering more projects, I'm interested." "I am, but I'm also offering something else." Victoria paused, and he could hear her choosing words carefully. "I want to create a new division within the company focused specifically on nonprofit and social impact work. Mission-driven campaigns for organizations that can't afford traditional agency rates but deserve high-quality strategy and execution. I want you to lead it." Daniel's mind went blank. "Lead it?" "Yes. You'd have full creative control, flexible scheduling, and a small team of contractors you'd manage. It would still be remote, still project-based, but with a guaranteed minimum number of projects per quarter. Essentially, stable income with the flexibility you need." "Victoria, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it. We can discuss details next week. But Daniel, this isn't charity. This is recognizing that you have a specific skill set and passion that could build something meaningful. I've been wanting to expand into impact work for years, but I didn't have the right person to lead it. Now I do." After she hung up, Daniel sat in stunned silence. This was more than he'd imagined possible, more than just recovery from the disaster of being fired. It was transformation into something better, something built specifically around his strengths and his circumstances. He wanted to tell someone, to share the news with another adult who would understand what it meant. But Claire was 3 states away, and his other friendships had atrophied during the years of grief and survival. The person he wanted to tell was Emma, and she wasn't there. The loneliness hit him suddenly, unexpectedly. He'd been managing it for so long, carrying it like background radiation, that he'd almost stopped noticing it. But in this moment of triumph, the absence of someone to share it with felt acute. Lily appeared in the doorway, pajamas on and teeth brushed, holding her rabbit. "Daddy, you okay?" He wiped at his eyes quickly. "Yeah, baby, just a lot of feelings today." "Happy feelings or sad feelings?" "Both, I think. Happy about work, sad that your mom isn't here to celebrate with us." Lily came over and climbed into his lap, even though she was getting too big for it. "I miss her too, but I think she'd be happy about your work stuff." "Yeah?" "Yeah, she always said you were really smart. She'd like that you're helping people." Daniel held his daughter close, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo, and felt the grief and the joy exist side by side. Emma would have been proud. Emma would have known exactly what to say to make this moment complete. But Emma was gone, and he had to learn how to celebrate victories in her absence. "You know what?" he said. "Let's do something special this weekend, just you and me, whatever you want." Lily pulled back to look at him. "Can we go to the Butterfly Conservatory for my birthday? Your birthday's not for 2 more weeks." "I know, but I really want to go, please." He smiled. "Okay, Butterfly Conservatory it is." The weekend trip to the conservatory became the highlight of Lily's month. They drove 40 minutes to the botanical gardens that housed it, and she pressed her face against the glass walls the entire time, watching monarchs and swallowtails and painted ladies drift through the humid air. Daniel followed her through the exhibits, listening to her endless questions and observations, taking photos on his phone that he knew he'd treasure. "Look, Daddy," she said, standing perfectly still as a bright orange butterfly landed on her shoulder. "It chose me." "It did. You must seem like a very safe person." "I am," she said seriously, barely breathing. "I would never hurt a butterfly." They stayed until closing time, and on the drive home, Lily fell asleep in the back seat clutching a stuffed butterfly from the gift shop. Daniel glanced at her in the rearview mirror and felt his heart physically ache with love for this small person who'd become his entire world. The following week brought a flurry of activity. Victoria sent over the formal proposal for the Social Impact Division, complete with budget projections and a contract that guaranteed him a baseline income that matched what he'd been making before, with potential for significantly more depending on project volume. He read through it 3 times, consulted with the lawyer Claire connected him with, and then signed it with hands that shook slightly. This was real. This was happening. He had meaningful work, financial stability, and the flexibility to actually be present in his daughter's life. It felt almost too good to be true, like the universe might still find a way to pull it away. But Victoria was nothing if not thorough. She set up a launch plan for the new division, including outreach to potential nonprofit clients, development of a contractor roster, and creation of systems that would allow the work to scale sustainably. Daniel found himself not just executing campaigns, but building infrastructure, developing processes, thinking strategically about growth. It was challenging in a way that made him feel alive. Lily's birthday arrived on a cold Saturday in mid-December. Daniel woke up early to decorate the apartment with streamers and balloons, setting up the craft station in the living room and preparing everything for the party. 6 girls arrived at 2 o'clock, a whirlwind of energy and excitement, and for the next 3 hours, his apartment was chaos in the best possible way. They made butterfly wings, decorating them with markers and glitter and ribbons. They ate pizza and carrot sticks, and the chocolate cake Daniel had stayed up late baking. They played games and sang happy birthday off-key and gave Lily presents she opened with wide-eyed delight. Through it all, Daniel moved among them, facilitating and supervising and feeling grateful that he could give his daughter this normal, joyful experience. Near the end of the party, as the girls were starting to wind down and parents were beginning to arrive for pickup, the doorbell rang. Daniel answered it expecting another parent, but instead found Victoria standing there holding a wrapped package. "Victoria," he said, genuinely surprised, "what are you doing here?" "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd drop off a birthday present for Lily. I hope that's okay. I should have texted first." "No, it's fine. Come in. The party's almost over, but I won't stay long. I just wanted to say hello." She stepped inside, looking slightly uncomfortable in the domestic chaos. Lily spotted her immediately and came running over, butterfly wings bobbing on her back. "Hi, you're Daddy's boss." "I am," Victoria agreed, crouching down to Lily's level. "Happy birthday, Lily. Your dad told me you're interested in butterflies, so I thought you might like this." She handed over the package. Lily tore into it with the unselfconscious enthusiasm of a 9-year-old and gasped when she saw what was inside. A hardcover book about butterfly conservation, beautifully illustrated and clearly expensive. "This is amazing," Lily breathed, flipping through the pages. "Thank you so much." "You're very welcome. I hope you enjoy it." Lily hugged the book to her chest, then looked up at Victoria with those serious eyes. "Are you still mad at my daddy?" Victoria's expression shifted, softening. "I was never really mad at your daddy. I was frustrated, and I didn't understand what he was dealing with. But we worked it out. He's doing really important work for me now. He says he helps families." "He does. He helps them in really important ways." Lily seemed satisfied with this answer. "Okay, good. Because he's the best daddy, and he deserves to have a good job." Victoria's eyes met Daniel's over Lily's head, and something passed between them. Understanding, respect, something warmer that he couldn't quite name. "You're absolutely right," Victoria said. "He is the best daddy. You're very lucky." "I know," Lily said simply, then ran off to show her friends the new book. Daniel walked Victoria to the door. "Thank you for that. You didn't have to come." "I wanted to. I've heard so much about Lily over the years, it seemed right to actually meet her on a happy occasion instead of just that one terrible morning." She paused on the threshold. "She's wonderful, Daniel. You're doing something really right with her." "I'm trying." "It shows." Victoria glanced back into the apartment where the girls were laughing and Lily was demonstrating her butterfly wings. "This is what you were protecting, what you were choosing over deadlines and meetings. I get it now. I didn't then, but I do now. Thank you for giving me the chance to do both. Thank you for taking it." She turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, I almost forgot. We got confirmation on 3 new nonprofit clients this week, all interested in the kind of work you did for Harmony House. Your calendar is going to fill up fast. That's great news. It is. We'll talk strategy on Monday. Enjoy the rest of the party. After she left, Daniel stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her walk down the hall to the elevator. He was struck by how much had changed in just 2 months. Victoria had gone from the person who fired him in front of his daughter to someone who showed up at that same daughter's birthday party with a thoughtful gift. The relationship had transformed from employer-employee to something more collaborative, more human. He closed the door and went back to the party, helping the last few girls clean up their craft supplies as their parents arrived. By 4:30, everyone had left except Lily, surrounded by presents and wrapping paper and still wearing her butterfly wings. "Best birthday ever?" Daniel asked, settling on the couch beside her. "Best birthday ever," she confirmed, leaning against his shoulder. "Thank you, Daddy." "You're welcome, baby. You deserve every good thing." They spent the evening going through her presents together, Lily explaining each one in detail and where she planned to keep it. The book from Victoria got a special place on her nightstand. When it was finally time for bed, she insisted on wearing the butterfly wings to sleep, and Daniel didn't have the heart to argue. "Daddy?" she said as he was tucking her in. "Are we happy now?" The question caught him off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we were sad for a long time after Mommy died, and then we were worried for a while when you lost your job, but now we're not sad or worried anymore. So are we happy?" Daniel thought about it. Really thought about it. Were they happy? The grief was still there, would always be there. Emma's absence was a permanent feature of their landscape, but there was joy too, real joy, not just the performance of it. There was stability. There was meaningful work. There was connection and possibility and hope. "Yeah, baby," he said softly. "I think we are happy. Or at least, we're learning how to be happy again." "Good," Lily said, closing her eyes. "I like being happy with you." He kissed her forehead and turned out the light, leaving her door cracked. Then he went back to the living room and looked at the aftermath of the party. The streamers still hanging, the wrapping paper in the recycling bin, the half-eaten cake on the counter. Evidence of celebration, of childhood, of a life being lived with intention and care. His phone buzzed. A text from Claire. "How was the party?" "Send pictures." He scrolled through his camera roll and selected the best ones. Lily blowing out candles, the girls in their butterfly wings, Lily's face when she opened the book from Victoria. He sent them all to Claire with a message. "It was perfect. She's happy. We're both happy." Claire's response came back immediately. "I can see that in the photos. You both look different than you did a few months ago. Lighter, maybe." "I'm so proud of you, little brother." Daniel stared at the message, feeling the weight of it. Proud. When was the last time someone had said they were proud of him? Not for a specific accomplishment, but for the daily work of survival and recovery and choosing to keep going when everything felt impossible. He typed back, "Thanks. That means a lot." "Really?" He put the phone down and started cleaning up the party debris, working methodically through the apartment until everything was back in order. When he was done, he made himself tea and sat at the kitchen table with his laptop, not to work, but to look at the calendar stretching ahead. Lily had winter break coming up in 2 weeks. He'd promised her they could bake cookies together and watch holiday movies and maybe drive out to see the lights at the botanical gardens. There were projects lined up for January, good work with organizations that mattered. There was the standing Monday video call with Victoria to discuss strategy and priorities. There was dinner with Melissa and the Harmony House team to celebrate the website's first month metrics. There was life, continuing, demanding attention and care and energy. But for the first time in years, Daniel felt equipped to meet those demands. Not perfectly. He'd never be perfect. And he was learning to be okay with that. But well enough. Sustainably. With room for both the work that paid the bills and the presence his daughter deserved. He closed the laptop and went to check on Lily one more time. She was sleeping peacefully, butterfly wings slightly askew, the book from Victoria within arm's reach. Daniel adjusted her blanket and stood there for a moment, watching her breathe, feeling the fierce protective love that had sustained him through the worst days. "We're going to be okay," he whispered to the sleeping child and to Emma's memory and to himself. "We're actually going to be okay." And standing there in his daughter's doorway, in the apartment they'd held on to through everything, Daniel finally believed it. Winter arrived in earnest the week after Lily's birthday, bringing with it the kind of cold that made the apartment's old heating system work overtime and turned morning walks to the bus stop into expeditions requiring layers. Daniel didn't mind. There was something clarifying about the cold, the way it demanded attention and presence. You couldn't be distracted when your breath formed clouds in the air and your fingers went numb if you forgot your gloves. The Social Impact Division launched officially in January with 3 confirmed clients and 2 more in serious discussion. Daniel found himself working longer hours than he'd anticipated, but the difference was that they were hours he chose, structured around Lily's schedule and his own capacity. He worked early mornings before she woke up, during school hours, and sometimes in the evenings after she went to bed. But when she needed him, he was there, fully there, not half present, while his mind churned through work problems. Victoria scheduled their Monday strategy calls for 9:30, after Lily's bus left, but before the day got too chaotic. During their 3rd call of the new year, she brought up something that had been hovering unspoken between them for weeks. "I've been thinking about the structure of this division," she said, her face filling his laptop screen. "Right now, you're managing everything alone: client relationships, strategy development, creative execution. That's not sustainable long-term." Daniel felt a familiar flutter of anxiety. "Are you saying I need to change something?" "I'm saying you need help. I want to bring on 2 more contractors, one focused on design and web development, one on content creation and social media. You'd manage them, but they'd handle execution while you focus on strategy and client relationships. It would distribute the workload more evenly." "That sounds expensive." "It's an investment in growth. The division is already profitable, Daniel. We can afford to build it properly." She paused, choosing words carefully. "But I need you to be honest with me. Can you manage a team while maintaining your boundaries around time with Lily? Because if you can't, we need to structure this differently. I'm not asking you to sacrifice what we've built here." He thought about it seriously, not just reacting, but actually considering the logistics. Managing a team meant additional coordination, but it also meant less execution pressure on him personally. It meant he could take on more strategic work without drowning in implementation details. It meant the division could grow beyond what he could accomplish alone. "I can do it," he said, "but I'll need clear communication protocols and project management systems. And I need the team to understand from the beginning that I work flexibly and expect the same from them." Victoria smiled. "Done. Start putting together the contractor profiles you'd want to work with. We'll begin hiring next week." By February, Daniel had assembled a small but talented team. Sarah Chen, a designer who'd left corporate agency work to freelance after her 2nd child was born, brought a sophisticated visual sensibility and deep understanding of accessibility. Marcus Riley, a content strategist who'd been laid off during the pandemic and never returned to traditional employment, had a gift for storytelling that matched Daniel's own instincts. They worked remotely, communicated through project management software, and met weekly via video to coordinate. The first campaign they collaborated on was for a literacy nonprofit that served low-income elementary schools. Daniel developed the strategy. Sarah created the visual identity and website, and Marcus wrote the content. It came together seamlessly, each person contributing their strengths while respecting everyone else's constraints and boundaries. When they presented it to the client, the executive director cried. "This is exactly what we needed," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You made us look professional without losing our heart. You told our story in a way that honors the kids and the teachers and the families. Thank you." After the call, Daniel sent a message to his small team. "This is why we do this work." "Thank you both for making it excellent," Sarah responded immediately. "Thank you for creating a space where we can do our best work on our own terms." Marcus added, "Seriously, I haven't felt this professionally fulfilled in years." Daniel read the messages and felt something settle in his chest. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was building something, not just for himself, but for other people who needed work structures that respected their humanity instead of demanding they sacrifice it. In March, Victoria asked him to lunch. They met at a small cafe near her office, the first time they'd seen each other in person since Lily's birthday party. She looked tired but energized, the kind of exhaustion that came from productive effort rather than futile struggling. The social impact division exceeded revenue projections for Q1, she said after they'd ordered, by 30%. Daniel's eyes widened. Really? Really? And I have 6 more nonprofits asking about our services. Word is spreading. You're building something significant here, Daniel. We're building it, he corrected. None of this happens without you taking the initial risk. Victoria waved that away. I took a calculated bet on talented person. You're the one doing the actual work. She paused, stirring her coffee. But I do want to talk about the future. Where do you see this division in a year? In 5 years? Daniel had been thinking about that question for weeks. Honestly, I see it becoming a model for how agencies can do social impact work sustainably, not as pro bono projects that drain resources, but as a viable business line that pays fair rates to skilled people while serving organizations that genuinely need help. I see us developing a reputation as the go-to team for mission-driven campaigns. That's ambitious. Is it too ambitious? No, Victoria said slowly. I don't think it is. I think you might actually be able to pull it off. She met his eyes directly. I want to make you a partner in the company, not for the whole agency, but specifically for the social impact division. You'd have equity, decision-making authority, and a stake in the growth you're creating. Daniel's mind went blank. Victoria, Before you say no, let me explain. This isn't charity or recognition for past struggles. This is me acknowledging that you've created something valuable and ensuring you benefit appropriately from its success. You've proven you can build and lead this work. I want to make it official. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it. Talk to a lawyer, review the numbers, make sure it makes sense for you and for Lily. But Daniel, you deserve this. You've earned it. He went home that afternoon in a daze, his mind churning through the implications. Partnership meant stability, meant building something he could pass on to Lily someday, meant recognition that he was more than just a contractor executing someone else's vision. It meant he'd gone from being fired in front of his daughter to being offered ownership in the company that fired him. The reversal was almost too much to process. That evening, after Lily was asleep, he called Claire. He hadn't talked to her in a few weeks, their regular Sunday calls interrupted by her twin's flu and his busy project schedule. She answered on the second ring. Hey, stranger, I was starting to think you'd forgotten about me. Never. I've just been buried in work. Good work, but still buried. I saw the photos you sent of Lily's science fair project. That butterfly poster was incredible. She worked so hard on it, won second place in her grade. She's amazing. You both are. Claire paused. You sound different, Danny. Lighter. I feel different. He took a breath. Claire, I need to tell you something. Victoria offered me a partnership. What? The woman who fired you? The same one, except now she wants to make me a partner in a new division I've been building. It's equity and decision-making authority, and it's real, Claire. It's a real opportunity. His sister was quiet for a long moment. How do you feel about it? Terrified, excited, grateful? Like maybe this is what I was supposed to be doing all along, and I just had to go through hell to find it. You did go through hell. You lost Emma. You nearly lost everything else. But you didn't give up. You kept showing up for Lily, and when someone finally gave you a chance, you proved you could still do exceptional work. Her voice softened. Emma would be so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. Daniel felt his throat close. I wish she could see this. See Lily growing up. See what we've built. I think she does see it. And I think she's happy you're finally letting yourself be happy again. They talked for another hour, catching up on everything from the twins' basketball games to Claire's plans to apply for a promotion at work. When they finally hung up, Daniel felt connected in a way he hadn't in months. Claire was right. He was letting himself be happy again. Not forgetting Emma or the grief, but making room for joy alongside it. The partnership paperwork took 2 weeks to finalize. Daniel worked with a lawyer Claire recommended, reviewing every clause and condition. The terms were more than fair. Victoria was giving him 20% equity in the social impact division with a path to increase that based on growth metrics. It came with a base salary that was actually higher than what he'd been making before, plus profit sharing and full benefits for him and Lily. There was even a clause about flexible scheduling and work-from-home arrangements built into the contract at the foundational level. He signed it on a Tuesday morning in April, sitting at Victoria's conference table with her lawyer present as witness. When it was done, Victoria reached across the table to shake his hand. "Welcome to partnership, Daniel. Thank you for believing in me, especially after everything. Thank you for proving me right." She released his hand and sat back. "Now, let's talk about the 5 new client proposals that came in this week." By May, the division had 8 active clients and a waiting list. Daniel hired 2 more contractors to handle the volume, carefully selecting people who shared his values around meaningful work and sustainable practices. Sarah helped him develop onboarding systems and project templates. Marcus created a content library of best practices. The operation ran smoothly, professionally, with the kind of efficiency that came from people who genuinely cared about what they were building. Lily's school year was winding down, and she'd flourished in ways Daniel hadn't anticipated. Her grades were excellent, she'd made new friends, and her confidence had grown visibly. Her teacher mentioned during the final parent-teacher conference that Lily seemed lighter, more engaged, more willing to participate. "Whatever you've been doing this year, keep doing it," the teacher said warmly. "She's really thriving." "I've just been trying to be more present," Daniel admitted. "Well, it shows. She talks about you constantly, about the work you do helping families, about cooking dinner together, about your weekend adventures. She knows she's loved and prioritized, and that makes all the difference." Walking out of the school that afternoon, Daniel felt the weight of what he'd almost lost. If Victoria hadn't offered him that contract position, if he'd spiraled further into financial crisis, if he'd had to take multiple jobs just to survive, Lily would have suffered. Not because he didn't love her, but because he wouldn't have had the capacity to show up the way she needed. The intervention Victoria provided hadn't just saved his career. It had saved his ability to be the father Lily deserved. In June, Harmony House invited Daniel and Victoria to their annual gala, a fundraising event that had grown significantly since the website launch. They'd raised over $200,000 in the 6 months since the rebrand, tripling their previous annual fundraising total. Melissa wanted to recognize them publicly for their contribution. Daniel brought Lily as his date, reasoning that she'd been part of the story from the beginning and deserved to see what her father's work created. She wore her favorite dress, purple, with butterflies embroidered on the hem, and took everything in with wide-eyed wonder. The gala was held at a renovated warehouse, decorated with flowers and string lights, filled with people who cared about making the community safer for vulnerable families. Victoria arrived alone, elegant in a navy dress that made her look softer than her usual corporate armor. She spotted them immediately and came over. "Lily, you look beautiful," she said warmly. "Thank you. Daddy said this is where we see how his work helped people." "That's exactly right. Would you like to meet some of the women your father's work has helped?" Lily nodded eagerly, and Victoria led them over to a small group that included Melissa and several current and former Harmony House residents. One of them, a woman named Jennifer, crouched down to Lily's level. "Your dad made the website that helped me find Harmony House," she said gently. "I didn't know where else to go, but I found their page and it made me feel safe enough to reach out. Now my kids and I have our own apartment, and I have a job I love. Your dad's work changed our lives." Lily looked up at Daniel with such pride that he had to blink back tears. "My dad's really good at helping people," she said solemnly. "He really is," Jennifer agreed. During dinner, Melissa gave a speech about the organization's growth and explicitly thanked Daniel and Victoria for their partnership. The room applauded, and Daniel felt Victoria's hand briefly touch his shoulder in acknowledgement. When he glanced at her, she was smiling, not her professional smile, but something real and unguarded. After dinner, while Lily was occupied with the dessert table under Melissa's supervision, Victoria pulled Daniel aside. "Can I tell you something?" she said quietly. "Of course. When I fired you, I thought I was making a hard but necessary business decision. I thought the company needed someone more reliable, more available, more willing to prioritize work above everything else." She paused, looking out at the crowd of people celebrating Harmony House's success. "I was wrong. Not about needing someone different, but about what different meant. You taught me that reliability isn't about being available 24/7. It's about showing up when it matters and delivering excellence within sustainable parameters. You taught me that prioritizing family doesn't make someone less valuable professionally. It makes them more human, more creative, more connected to the kind of work that actually matters. Daniel didn't know what to say. I think we taught each other things. Maybe, Victoria turned to face him fully. But I need you to know you didn't just save yourself by making this division work. You changed how I think about running a company, about what success looks like, about how we can structure work to support human flourishing instead of demanding people sacrifice themselves for corporate growth. That means a lot, Daniel said quietly. Good, because I want to expand this model, not just the social impact division, but the whole company. Flexible scheduling, project-based work, respect for people's lives outside the office. You've proven it can work. I want to make it standard practice. Before Daniel could respond, Lily ran over with a cookie in each hand. Daddy, look! They have butterfly cookies. He took the cookie she offered, and Victoria accepted the other one with a smile. They stood there together, Daniel, Victoria, and Lily, eating butterfly cookies at a fundraiser for families in crisis. And Daniel thought about how impossibly far they'd come from that terrible Saturday morning when Victoria showed up at his door with fury and termination. The summer unfolded with a gentleness that felt earned rather than given. Daniel took 2 weeks off in July, the first real vacation he'd taken since Emma died, and he and Lily drove up the coast to visit Claire and her family. They spent the days at the beach and the evenings cooking dinner together while the kids played. Claire pulled him aside one night while the kids were watching a movie. You look good, Danny, really good. Not just surviving, but actually thriving. I feel that way. It's strange being happy again. Sometimes I feel guilty about it. Because of Emma? He nodded. Like moving forward means leaving her behind. Claire squeezed his hand. It doesn't. It means honoring her by building a good life for the daughter you made together. Emma wouldn't want you stuck in grief forever. She'd want this. You healthy and present and creating meaningful work. She'd want Lily growing up with a father who's capable of joy. I know you're right. It's just hard to shake the feeling that happiness is somehow disloyal. Then don't shake it. Just let it exist alongside the happiness. You can miss her and still be grateful for what you have now. Both things can be true. Driving home after the visit, Lily asleep in the back seat and the highway stretching endlessly ahead, Daniel thought about Claire's words. Both things could be true. He could carry Emma with him, her memory, her influence, the love they'd shared, while still building a future that felt full and purposeful. The grief didn't have to end for the joy to be real. In August, the Social Impact Division landed its biggest client yet, a national organization focused on educational equity. The project would span 18 months and involve campaigns in 12 different cities. It was exactly the kind of work Daniel had envisioned when he first started developing the division's strategy, and it validated everything he'd been building. He assembled his team for a celebration video call, everyone raising coffee mugs or water glasses to toast the achievement. Sarah's kids ran through the background of her video square, and Marcus's dog barked at something off-screen, and Daniel felt a surge of affection for this scrappy collection of talented people who'd chosen to build something different together. This is what we're capable of, he told them. This is the kind of impact we can have when we work together on things that matter. Thank you all for being part of this. September brought Lily's first day of 4th grade, and Daniel walked her to the bus stop with the same bittersweet awareness every parent feels watching their child grow more independent. She was so confident now, so assured in who she was and where she belonged. She still missed Emma, they both did, but she was building a life that felt full despite that absence. Have a great first day, baby, he said, hugging her before she boarded the bus. I will. Are you going to work on the helping families stuff today? I am. We have a new project starting with a really big organization. Cool. Tell them I said good luck. He laughed. I will. Watching the bus pull away, Daniel felt the familiar pang of her growing up, but it was gentler now, sweetened by the knowledge that he was present for this growth. He wasn't missing it because of work chaos or depression or survival mode. He was here, witnessing and supporting and celebrating every stage. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. First day of school? Just put her on the bus. How did you know? You mentioned it last week. How are you feeling? Proud, a little sad, mostly grateful. That's parenting in 3 words. Daniel smiled at that. Over the months, Victoria had become something more than a business partner. Not quite a friend, the professional relationship was too central, but something warmer than purely professional. She checked in on Lily, remembered important dates, asked about Daniel's well-being with genuine interest. She'd become part of their world in a way he hadn't anticipated but deeply appreciated. "Thank you," he typed, "for everything you've made possible." Her response came immediately. "Thank you for showing me what's possible when we structure work around human reality instead of corporate fantasy." In October, the division celebrated its first full year of operation. They'd served 23 nonprofit clients, launched 15 major campaigns, helped raise over $3 million for organizations doing critical work, and built a reputation as the agency that combined excellence with integrity. The team had grown to 8 regular contractors, all working flexibly, all producing exceptional results. Victoria organized a small dinner to celebrate. Daniel, Victoria, Sarah, Marcus, and the 4 other core team members who'd joined over the year. They gathered at a restaurant downtown, sharing food and stories, and the kind of easy camaraderie that came from people who genuinely respected and valued each other. "I want to make a toast," Victoria said, raising her glass, "to Daniel, for building something that matters. To all of you, for making it excellent. And to the idea that we can do meaningful work without sacrificing our humanity. Thank you all for proving that's possible." They clinked glasses, and Daniel felt the weight of what they'd created together. This wasn't just a successful business division. It was a model for how work could be structured to serve people instead of consuming them. It was proof that flexibility and excellence weren't mutually exclusive. It was hope for everyone who'd been told they had to choose between career and family, between professional achievement and personal well-being. Walking back to his car after dinner, Daniel called Lily to check in. His neighbor, Mrs. Chen, was watching her for the evening. "Hi, Daddy. Are you having fun at your party?" "I am. How are things there?" "Good. Mrs. Chen taught me how to play mahjong. I'm not very good yet, but it's fun." "That's great, baby. I'll be home in about 30 minutes, okay?" "Okay, Daddy?" "Yeah?" "I'm proud of you for the work you do." His throat tightened. "Thank you, sweetheart. That means everything to me." After he hung up, he sat in his car for a moment before starting the engine, letting the enormity of the past year wash over him. He'd gone from terminated to partner, from barely surviving to actually thriving, from choosing between work and fatherhood to finding a way to do both well. The transformation felt improbable, miraculous, entirely undeserved and yet undeniably real. November brought the anniversary of Emma's death, 3 years and 8 months since the night that changed everything. Daniel and Lily visited her grave on a Saturday morning, bringing flowers and spending time in the quiet of the cemetery. They didn't talk much, just sat together on the grass by her headstone, being present with the grief and the love. "Do you think she knows about your new job?" Lily asked eventually. "I think if there's any way for her to know, she does. I think she'd be happy that you're helping families like we're a family." "Yeah, baby, I think she would be too." They left the cemetery hand in hand, and Daniel felt the familiar ache of Emma's absence alongside gratitude for what he and Lily had built in the aftermath. Both things were true. Both things could coexist. December arrived with the first snow of the season, fat flakes that made Lily press her face against the window with wonder. Daniel had learned to love winter again, to appreciate its quiet beauty instead of seeing it as just another obstacle to manage. He and Lily spent a Saturday afternoon baking cookies, flour dusting every surface, Christmas music playing from his phone. "Next year I'll be 10, Lily announced, carefully cutting shapes from rolled dough. "That's double digits." "You're growing up so fast." "Is that sad?" "A little, but mostly it's wonderful. I get to watch you become more yourself every year." She thought about that seriously. "I like who I'm becoming." "Me too, baby. Me too." That evening, after Lily was asleep and the kitchen was cleaned, Daniel sat at the table with a cup of tea and his laptop. He opened a document he'd been working on for weeks, a proposal for expanding the social impact division into a separate nonprofit consulting firm that could serve even more organizations at reduced rates. It was ambitious, maybe too ambitious, but Victoria had encouraged him to think big. His phone rang. Victoria calling late on a Saturday night, which was unusual. "Hey," he answered. "Everything okay?" "Everything's fine. I'm sorry to call so late, but I just got off the phone with a foundation program officer. They're looking to fund a pilot program that would provide free marketing and communication services to grassroots nonprofits. They asked if we'd be interested in applying." Daniel's heart rate picked up. "That's exactly what I've been working on. I have a whole proposal drafted." "I know. I saw the outline you shared last week. That's why I thought of us when they called." She paused. The grant would be substantial, enough to fund a full year of free services to 10 organizations. It could be the proof of concept we need to make this model sustainable long term. "When do they need the application?" 3 weeks? "I know that's tight, but Daniel, this could be transformative." He looked at the document on his screen, at the months of thinking and planning now suddenly urgent and possible. "Let's do it. I'll pull together the full proposal this week." "I was hoping you'd say that. We'll work on it together." They spent the next 3 weeks developing the grant application, working in focused sprints around their other commitments. Daniel wrote late into the nights after Lily was asleep, crafting a vision for how they could serve grassroots organizations that had never been able to afford professional marketing support. Victoria contributed the operational plans and budget projections. Sarah and Marcus provided portfolio examples and case studies. The whole team rallied around the opportunity. They submitted the application on a Friday afternoon in mid-January, exactly 3 weeks after Victoria's phone call. Daniel hit send and immediately felt the familiar wave of post-deadline exhaustion mixed with hope. The foundation's decision came 6 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning in early March. Daniel was helping Lily with her math homework when his phone rang with Victoria's number. "We got it," she said without preamble. "We got the grant." Daniel's vision blurred. "We did?" "All of it, the full amount. They want to feature us as a model program in their annual report." "Daniel, we're actually going to do this." He looked at Lily, who was watching him with curious eyes. "We got the grant, baby, the one that's going to help us help even more families." She grinned. "That's awesome, Daddy." After he hung up, he sat with Lily at the kitchen table, her math homework forgotten, and tried to process what this meant. The grant would fund free services to 10 grassroots nonprofits for a full year. If successful, it could lead to ongoing funding and expansion. It could become a sustainable model for making high-quality marketing accessible to organizations that needed it most. It could be the culmination of everything he'd been building since that terrible morning when Victoria showed up at his door. "You look happy," Lily observed. "I am happy. Really, really happy." "Good. You should be happy. You work really hard and you help a lot of people." "Thank you, sweetheart." He pulled her into a hug. "You know what makes me happiest?" "What?" "That I get to do this work and still be here for you. That I don't have to choose anymore." She hugged him back tightly. "I like that too." Spring arrived with the kind of warmth that felt like promise. The grant program launched in April with a cohort of 10 organizations selected from over 50 applicants. Daniel organized kickoff calls with each one, learning about their missions and challenges, developing customized strategies to help them reach the communities they served. It was some of the most meaningful work he'd ever done. In May, just over a year since Victoria had offered him partnership, they sat down together to review the division's performance. The numbers were remarkable. Revenue had doubled, client satisfaction scores were the highest in the company, and the team had grown to 12 contractors all working sustainably and producing exceptional results. "You've exceeded every projection," Victoria said, sliding the reports across the table. "This division is now one of the most profitable parts of the company, and it's doing it while maintaining the values and flexibility we built it around." "We did it together," Daniel reminded her. "We did. But you led it. You created the vision and executed it brilliantly." She paused, her expression shifting into something more personal. "I need to tell you something. When I fired you, I thought I was protecting the company from someone who couldn't keep up. I was wrong. You weren't failing because you lacked ability or commitment. You were failing because the structure didn't support your reality. The problem wasn't you. It was the system. You figured that out. You changed the system." Because you showed me it needed changing. Because you proved there was a better way. Victoria's eyes were bright. Thank you for that. For teaching me to see beyond traditional corporate models and recognize that supporting people's humanity actually makes them more effective, not less. Daniel felt his chest tighten with emotion. Thank you for giving me a second chance, for seeing past my mistakes to what I was still capable of. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of their shared history present but no longer painful. Then Victoria smiled. So, ready to start planning for year 2? Absolutely. By the time summer arrived, the life Daniel and Lily had built together felt solid, sustainable, and genuinely joyful. He was doing meaningful work that challenged him creatively while respecting his boundaries. Lily was thriving in school and friendships, confident and happy, and growing into herself. The grief of Emma's loss was still there, would always be there, but it existed alongside contentment rather than consuming everything else. On a Saturday in late June, Daniel and Lily went to the Butterfly Conservatory again, the place that had become their special tradition. They walked through the humid greenhouse, watching monarchs and swallowtails dance through the air, and Lily explained the different species with the confident knowledge of someone who'd made butterflies her passion project. Daddy, do you remember when you said butterflies might not remember being caterpillars? She asked. I remember. I've been thinking about it. I think they do remember. They have to, right? Because how else would they know to look for the same plants their mothers laid eggs on? How else would they know what to do? Daniel smiled at her logic. That's a good point. I think remembering is important. Even when you change into something new, you should remember where you came from. He stopped walking and crouched down to her level. You're absolutely right. Remembering is important. We remember, Mommy, and that makes us who we are. But we also get to grow and change and become new versions of ourselves. Both things can be true. Lily nodded seriously. Like you. You remember being sad and worried, but now you're happy and you help families. You're different, but you're still you. Exactly like that. She hugged him, quick and fierce, then ran ahead to look at a display about migration patterns. Daniel watched her go, this brave, thoughtful, magnificent child he and Emma had created together, and felt gratitude so profound it almost hurt. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. The foundation just called. They want to renew the grant for year 2 and expand it to 20 organizations. Congratulations. He read the message twice, letting the reality sink in. This was real. This was sustainable. He'd built something that would continue to grow and serve and matter. Thank you for making all of this possible, he typed back. Her response came immediately. Thank you for showing up and doing the work. As summer deepened into the long, lazy days of July and August, Daniel found moments to reflect on the journey that had brought him here. From the devastation of Emma's death to the crisis of unemployment to the miraculous intervention of Victoria's contract offer to the partnership and the grant and the life he'd rebuilt piece by careful piece. It had been brutal and beautiful, impossible and inevitable, the kind of transformation that only came from being broken down to your foundation and choosing to build yourself back up differently. On a warm evening in late August, he and Lily sat on their apartment balcony eating popsicles and watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Lily had just finished explaining her plan for 4th grade, which involved becoming class president and starting a butterfly conservation club. You have big plans, Daniel observed. I learned it from you. You had big plans for helping families, and you made them happen, with a lot of help from other people. But you had the idea first, and you didn't give up even when it was hard. She licked her popsicle thoughtfully. That's what I want to do. Have ideas and not give up. Daniel looked at his daughter, sticky with popsicle juice and radiant with confidence, and felt his heart overflow. This was what he'd been fighting for. This was what made all of it worthwhile. Not the career success, or the partnership, or the grants, but the fact that Lily was growing up with a father who was present, engaged, and capable of modeling resilience and hope. I love you so much, baby, he said. I love you too, Daddy. She finished her popsicle and leaned against his shoulder. We make a pretty good team. The best team. They sat together as the sky darkened and the first stars appeared, and Daniel thought about how impossibly far they'd come. From the knock on the door that shattered everything to this moment of peace and possibility. From failure to redemption. From survival to flourishing. The journey had been longer and harder than he ever could have imagined. But sitting here with his daughter, watching the sky change colors, doing work that mattered and building a life that felt authentic and sustainable, he wouldn't trade any of it. The pain had been real, but so was the transformation. The grief had been crushing, but so was the joy that came after. Both things were true. Both things would always be true. And somehow, impossibly, beautifully, that was enough.